Welcome to EOCP2021's conference, everyone. My name is Jim McQuarrie. I will be moderating the wastewater stream today. And I'm excited, or I'm happy to introduce to you our first speaker, Darlene Dyson. She's going to be talking on damage prevention and shared responsibility. Darlene has been with BC One Call since its inception in 1994, starting as a customer service agent, advancing to operations management, and most recently to Director of Operations and Education. Has given her a unique opportunity in gaining excellent understanding of the One Call industry. Darlene has been involved in the startup agent training in a number of One Call systems throughout Canada and the US. She's actually involved in the BC Common Ground Alliance organization, where she represents BC One Call on the Alliance board, sits on the Education and Best Practice Committee, and participates in the jointly sponsored province-wide Dig Safe seminars. She also travels through BC to share the important message of call before you dig, and she has an extensive career in the communications and cable industry in the fields of safety and damage prevention. So it's my pleasure to pass this over to Darlene.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to EOCP for giving me this opportunity this morning to share the BC One Call damage prevention message. Okay, BC One Call is the communications link between the excavating community and the owners and operators of underground facilities who are registered members. It's important to know that BC One Call does not provide locate information. We don't do locates. We are the communications link that allows the excavating community a venue to be able to place locate requests. And our mission is safety and damage prevention. We want to do what we can to help the utility owners prevent damages to their underground infrastructure. But over and above that, we want to make sure that every excavator at the end of the day goes home safely to their families. The reality is that every time you dig in the ground, you run the risk of loss of life or damage to property if you hit any of the underground infrastructure. It is not uncommon for contractors or excavators to think that the gas line is going to be 3 to 4 feet deep, when the reality is it's not uncommon to find a gas line sometimes as shallow as 6 inches deep. Sorry. My apologies here. My screen's just jumping around for some reason. What are the results of damage? The results of damage to underground infrastructure can be anything from environmental contamination, loss of services. About 86% of reported damages result in some kind of service interruption or disruption. It can result in emergency response events, increased costs of service delivery, increased insurance premiums, and decreased credibility around the services that are being provided. The 2019 damage information reporting tool, DIRT, is reporting statistics that 1 in 4 damages are the result of no locate request. 1 in 5 damages involve hazardous or life-threatening facilities. More than 48 damages occur every workday. Total number of damages across Canada-wide was 11,949. Which was a drop of 0.8% from 2018, and 11% of those damages were done here in BC. Backhoes, trenches are the most common equipment being used, and the most common root cause of damages was excavation issues. $1 billion annually in damages across the country in Canada, and that equates to about $2,739,726 daily in damages across the country. It's really important to understand that damage prevention is a shared responsibility. It's not just the responsibility of the utility owners, the excavating community, or the One Call services. It's very, very important that we all work together as a shared responsibility. And the solution to damages to BC One Call is to click or call before you dig. What does the law say about around One Call here in the province of Canada? At this time, we do not have any provinces where there is actual legislation around one call, either being a member of the one call if you're an owner or operator of underground infrastructure, or calling before you dig. There is a bill before the legislation, Bill S229, that is looking for one call legislation, but at this point in time, the only province in Canada that has any kind of legislation is Ontario. Here in BC, we do have the BC Oil and Gas Commission regulation that has made it mandatory for all pipelines in the province of British Columbia to be a registered member of BC One Call. And we do have people like WorkSafe BC and the Technical Safety BC who endorse and support One Call, who are out there driving the trucks, making sure the excavators are following the required procedures that they need to be ensuring that they're digging safely. And of course, the utility owners also have their own regulations in place in terms of permits, right-of-ways, and hand exposing of lines. How does the one call system work? Well, you can place a locate request one of three ways. You can either call in to the call center and speak to an agent. You can go to our website and do an e-ticket, or you can use your mobile app to place a locate request. Okay. When you place a locate request, two things happen. A confirmation document is sent back to you with all of the information on your locate request. We do ask that you take time to review that document to make sure it's accurate, and if there's any corrections to be needed to be made, please call back to BC One Call. And at the same time, a notification is being sent out to the utility owners who are registered in the area where you are digging. In this particular scenario, the locate went to the gas company, the water, and the hydro. Gas company provided a response that there was no facilities in the area, as did the water company. Hydro, on the other hand, had infrastructure registered in the area, and they sent out a package to the excavator notifying them of where the utilities are located. It's important to note here in the province of British Columbia that not all of our utility owners will physically locate their lines. The major utilities, TELUS, Fortis, and Hydro, will generally send you a package. And some of the other utility owners will send you a package or direct you to their website where you can find the information, but each and every BC One Call member will respond to your locate request. Placing your locate is step one. It's not the end to the process by any means. We want you to make sure you check your email to receive your locate confirmation and you validate or verify the information. We want you to check in with the utility owners who are not registered members of BC One Call, because it's not mandated. Not all utility owners, including some of the major municipalities, are a registered member of BC One Call. So make sure that you check to find out who else is in the area and notify them individually. Check the maps to familiarize yourself with the location of any underground facilities. The maps that you receive from the utility owners to make sure they've provided you with the information for the right area. Check that you are following any and all ground disturbance best practices in terms of overhead power, traffic control, signage, etc. Check by hand before using any mechanical equipment that could potentially strike a buried infrastructure. Another myth for the excavating community is that gas lines are steel heavy pipes, and the reality is they're not. They're plastic and they can be easily damaged. Check for visible infrastructure, meters, valve covers, utility poles, junction boxes, even something as simple as a sign to indicate that there are utilities in the area where you may be digging. Now, one of the important pieces when you're placing your locate request is that you identify the size of your excavation prior to placing your locate request. When you do a locate request with through the BC One Call system, you must provide a map to identify the area where you're digging. You have to go to the map, draw the polygon, and there are restrictions on sizes. So if you're doing a regular locate, that will allow you to do from a minimum of a 1 square meter polygon up to 1,000 meters. If you're doing a project in a city, it will allow you 1,000 square meters up to 60,000 square meters. If it's a rural area on a project, up to 800,000 square meters. It's important that you identify whether you want to do a regular locate or a project or a large project prior to going to the mapping piece, because once you get to the map, if you've got the wrong type of ticket, you're not going to be able to do your polygon. So take a few minutes to look over the restriction sizes and make sure that you are aware, a regular locate request will usually apply to a civic, one civic address. But if you're moving into out to the street and you're doing anything bigger than just one lot, then you're probably going to have to move to a project or a large project, which would allow you to do an extended area on a major project such as tree planting. There are some timelines with BC One Call that we ask that you accommodate where possible. When you are placing a locate request, a regular locate requires a minimum of 3 full working days notice. You can place a priority locate, which means you're asking for the information the same day that you're calling the locate in, or a short notice where you're asking for the information prior to the minimum 3-day default. You have to call your priority and short notices in, and the agents will let you know that they're going to request it for you, but they cannot guarantee a response within the 3 days. An emergency locate request will be responded to as quickly as possible by our members. However, there is specific criteria that you have to have in place in order to place an emergency locate, and that is that the type of work that you are doing is a repair or replacement of an essential service, a safety or environmental concern. For example, if a farmer has is out in the Fraser Valley and his fence goes down and his cattle are in the neighbor's yard eating her garden, that is not an emergency. That would be a priority. There's no risk of loss of life of limb. Or, however, if the cattle are walking on the Trans-Canada Highway, that becomes a public safety issue, and that would constitute an emergency locate request. You must also have an emergency crew en route or on site in order to place an emergency locate. When you place a locate request, your excavation must start within 14 calendar days of placing the request. That is as a result of the BC Gas Act that states that any excavation activity must start within 14 calendar days of placing the request. And for the Gas Act intents and purposes, that is considered a law. The life of a ticket is 30 calendar days from the date that the locate request was placed. Some owners may request a more frequent update, but for the most part, the 30-day life of a ticket will be in play. If your work does not commence within the 14 calendar days or does extend past the 30 days, then it's important that you contact either the call center or go back into your ticket on the web and place a relocate, because that ticket will no longer be valid once those parameters have passed. If your excavation does happen to get canceled, please don't hesitate to contact BC One Call and just let us know so that we can make sure the utility owners know. Please, if you are going to be doing any kind of ground disturbance, and it doesn't matter whether you're doing a major project or you're doing work on your own residential property, it's important that you call before you dig. I remember one of my very, very first encounters as a BC One Call agent years and years ago, and an elderly gentleman called in, and you could hear the panic in his voice, and you could hear the gas spewing in the background, and all he was doing was putting in a 6-inch pipe to hold up a flower for his wife, and he'd actually punctured the gas line. A little bit of statistics on BC One Call. In 2020, BC One Call did 212,000 tickets with over 609 notifications. There's an average of 3 to 5 members notified on each locate request. In 2021, surprisingly enough, when we thought this was going to be a slower year, our numbers are much higher than, I think it's about 22% higher than we were in 2020. So that's good news. We have more and more people placing locates and using the One Call service. Fortis Gas a few years ago did a Can You Dig It program, and they wanted to identify the root causes to damages to the gas line, and they identified 2 root causes. One was repeat offenders, but the other one was that 70% of the damages to gas lines were done by people that had never even placed a call. So we're working diligently to try to educate the excavating community here in the province of British Columbia of the importance of calling before you dig. We try to encourage everybody to go to the website and place the locate online. It's a much quicker process for yourself because you don't have to be waiting in queue. Right at this time, about 82.3% of our contractors are now using the web ticket as opposed to calling. 95% plus of our members and about 49% of our homeowners will now do a web ticket as opposed to calling BC One Call. We want to encourage anybody who is disturbing the ground to call. As I mentioned a moment ago, whether you're a homeowner digging on your own property, equipment operators, contractors, home builders, landscapers, engineering and consultants who are in the planning or designing stages, it is very critical that you place a locate request before you proceed with your excavation activity or your planning of your design. Who should become a member of BC One Call? We are actively pursuing every utility owner, and we have been for many years. We have one gentleman dedicated to membership exclusively. He meets with the municipalities and the utility owners. The risk of not being a member to the one call is that it's a risk to the public. It's a risk to your own employees. Your reputation is at stake if there's an incident and you're not a one call member and you've got an excavator who has done their due diligence and yet the utility owner has not done so. WorkSafe BC and Technical Safety, they will be monitoring you to encourage you to become a member. One of the big benefits of membership, especially for your municipalities, is the ability to recoup costs from lost cuts from repair revenues for saw cuts. And also BC One Call, we don't just have membership around excavation activity and utilities now. We also have non-traditional infrastructure, surveys, monuments, and fiber that is being protected by the owner being a member of BC One Call. I would like to encourage each and every one of you to take a few minutes to go to the BC One Call website, www.bc1c.ca. We have a Dig Safe community section where you can get information on one call systems, supporting one call message and private locators, education and training. You can go to our education and safety tips page where we have webinars, promotional material, and most of our promotional material is there in English, Punjabi, and Chinese. You can get ticket entry tips, BC One Call visit videos, and lists of our member companies. BC One Call we are on all of the 4 platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and we encourage you to share our messages and follow our social media platforms. And that is the end of my presentation, and I would like to ask if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask.
One of the questions, what's the cost of the membership to the?
The cost of the membership to become a member depends on the size of the utilities plant that you own. It starts at approximately $100 for a very, very small utility. And I mentioned that we have a gentleman, Tony Roberts, who does membership recruitment. Often if it's a small utility and even some of the larger utilities, he will waive the membership fee because it's more important that we get you on board. And it can go right up to $2,500 depending on the size of the infrastructure. And in terms of the cost for the notification to each member company, it is $2.25 that each utility owner pays to receive a one call ticket. And for the excavating community, it is a free service. There is no charge for you to place a locate request.
Oh, that's interesting. Just checking the questions and answers. I'm going to stall a little bit. I did take a look at an excavation in a larger municipality at an intersection. And honestly, when I looked in the hole, there was so much crisscrossing lines in there, like you just wondered where the dirt went to. Like it was, you couldn't excavate. You had to hand dig around it. There was sewer pipes, water pipes, fiber. It was unbelievable how much is buried under some of the streets in our municipalities.
That is so true, Jim. And in fact, there's an intersection in Vancouver, I believe it's Terminal and Main, where we actually have 14 utility members registered there. If you're digging in the Fort St. John area, if you're up in the northern region where there's a lot of gas lines, it's not uncommon to have 15, 20 pipeline companies come up on one locate just because there's so many of them there. Yeah. And it's interesting if you ever get an opportunity to see a map where you can see that underground piece.
Yes, I would imagine. So I can relate with the importance of it, especially for a lot of our collections guys. And distribution people for sure. Anything, Heather?
No questions yet. We have one person say, "Thank God for hydro excavating."
What did Heather say? I couldn't hear
She
her.
was there. Heather was just one comment was thank God for Hydro's input there. I guess somebody had a close call.
You know, unfortunately,
Excavator.
there's many close calls, and
Yeah.
some that are not just close calls, actual damages.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so we got. I'm going to read the question off here. What did you do if you put in a call? What do you do if you put in a call and don't get all the utility company's information?
Good question. You can actually go back into your ticket, and you can do a what's called a positive response. You just log on to your ticket, and it'll take you to a screen where you can send a reminder out to the utility owner that has not responded to you. You can also call into the call center 1-800-474-6886 and have one of the agents take care of that for you.
Good, thank you. Just a personal, from a perspective, do most of these people know where most of their stuff is?
Some do, some don't.
Yeah.
You know, so some of these utilities have been in the ground for 100 years.
That was my point, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, if you are ever excavating and you come across underground infrastructure that's not on the map that you got, please take the time to call that utility owner and make them aware of that, because they all very diligently try to update their maps. But you know, the stark reality is that years and years and years ago, this information wasn't documented. So it's possible that you could come across something that would not be identified by the utility owner.
Okay, well, thank you.
If you know where a gas line is.
All right, so here I'm Mr. Saunders. Hey, Billy. If you know where a gas line is, do you still need to call if you are going to hand dig around it?
You should always call before you dig. It's really, really important. If you ever encounter a problem, you go ahead and dig, and then you encounter a problem, the first thing that is going to be asked is, do you have a one-call ticket?
Yeah.
And that's what is going to be the basis for the responsibility for any damages. It only takes a minute or two. I would encourage everybody to call before they dig on every ground disturbance, regardless, because as Jim just pointed out, there could be something unexpected there that you may not even be aware of over and above the gas line.
And it's just good practice for sure.
Good, best practice, call
Best
before
practice,
you dig.
yeah. And Derek is putting one in for the vac trucks. They're a win for him. They do the least damage, I imagine.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. But you know, the vac trucks, it's still ground disturbance. And the best practice is, if you are disturbing the ground, you call.
Yes, agreed.
Are more inquiries done via email or by phone? Which is the best way to submit your...
The web ticket. 82% of the excavators are now using the web ticket. You can do that 24/7, 365. You don't have to be sitting on the phones. The phones are still very, very busy with all kinds of other, maybe somebody's having an issue. So it's not uncommon to have to sit in queue on the phones for a considerable length of time. So it's more efficient for you. You can do it on your own time. But no, we're trying to encourage everybody to move to the web ticket.
Okay. Good. Larry Wilson's got a question. Are there certain utility owners that must be located by the utility owner? Sorry, is there certain utilities that must be located by the utility owner?
There may well be. Each utility owner is going to have their own policies and procedures in place. When you're talking about digging around high pressure pipelines, like for example Chevron and Esso and the high pressure pipelines, they're generally going to be marking their own lines, and they're going to want somebody on site with you while you're excavating around their infrastructure. So it would probably vary from utility to utility depending on their in-house procedures.
That makes sense for sure. The next question comes in from Daniel. This seems to have changed now. Can you speak to how people used to always do an emergency BC1 call instead of doing it ahead of time?
Oh, yes, I can speak to that. And
Hot
you know
spot.
that has been a problem. I could go back to 1994 and we had this problem, and you know it's planning on the part of the excavator, and it because there is specific criteria around an emergency locate, repair, replacement of essential services. For example, if you're a municipality, or there was a plumber on the island that placed every locate as an emergency because the type of work they were doing was repair, replacement of a service. So the policy has always been the same, but from a BC One Call perspective, if somebody calls in and says to us, this is an emergency, it meets the criteria, we're going to place it as an emergency. But it's up to the utility owners, and they do monitor that to make sure people are not abusing that emergency procedures, because that is for sure. You know, there have been municipalities that maybe don't have their work planned or their crews planned, and then they're ready to do excavation. So because they're in that criteria, they can call it in.
Makes sense.
We try to address it as the best we can, but it's really a utility issue that they have to address from their side.
I understand.
And I have a question. What if my neighbor did something and I know they didn't call BC One Call? How do I nicely tattletale on them?
Well,
Without going into too many details.
in the interest of retaining your neighbor relationship, it's without them knowing is the question. You know, that's a hard situation, and unfortunately, we have to rely on everybody to be responsible and do their due diligence and make that call. You know, you could certainly contact the gas company or whoever you were concerned about and say that your neighbor, you know, is digging, but that's a challenging situation.
He is a challenging neighbor. So. There's no
Okay, I think that seems to be wrapping up our questions. We've got we do have a little bit of time. We're finishing a little bit early. So that's it for the questions? Okay, so I guess we just go.
Sorry,
Oh.
one more just came in.
Oh, wait, somebody just got one. Hang on a sec.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. James Cronin.
Okay, if all parties have done their due diligence and an incident occurs, who is ultimately responsible?
That's a really good
Well,
question.
he had another line. He assumes it's the excavation because they still should be doing best practice in the excavation. But
Exactly. What is going to happen is that whoever is litigating that is going to look at the due diligence piece very, very closely. Was there a one call ticket placed? Is this excavator doing what he should be doing properly? Has he implemented all of the best practices? And that's what's going to determine who is responsible. If they've placed a locate and then they just go ahead and dig without hand exposing and following the other best practices, then the excavator's probably going to be responsible. If the excavator has done everything they can and the utility owner's not a registered member of One Call, then in all likelihood the utility owner who hasn't done their due diligence would be responsible.
yeah, okay, that makes sense. It's a diligence. It's how much effort did you put into it? And it kind of leads to another question here that we had was, if you plan on hand digging around a gas line, do you still have to call?
Any ground disturbance, you need to call
Yeah.
before you disturb the ground. It's in your best interest. It's for your protection.
Yeah.
Because if WorkSafe BC or anybody else gets involved in an incident like that, the first question you're going to be asked is, what is your one call ticket number? It's important that you have that ticket number and that it's a valid ticket. Don't place a locate today and then dig next year and use that same ticket. It has to be a valid ticket.
Yeah, so I think the answer to that question that we were reading on the chat line was, you know, it's basically at your own peril. If you are supposed to call, if you're hand digging around it and if anything goes wrong, going to be in trouble.
And things happen.
Yep. As you said, gas lines are some plastic. I mean, it doesn't take much to send a pickaxe through something like that.
Exactly, and you also have fiber optics that are like just in a
Oh, yeah.
plastic case and stuffed in the side of the curbs.
Very
So
good point.
yeah,
Good.
yeah.
How are we doing for questions? I think it was in the presentation, but somebody's just asking how long does the ticket stay open for? I think it was 30 days.
The guidelines there is you place your locate request. The utilities have 3 days to respond. You
Yep.
have 14 days to start your excavation, and the ticket is valid for 30 days.
Yes, yeah,
And
okay.
it just takes, don't wait until day 30 or day 14 to call in if you haven't had a response or you're going to continue excavating. Call in 2 or 3 days before that date so that you've got time to get everything renewed before, so that you can continue your project.
It makes sense, timing for sure.
Yes.
Who, is it this one?
Yep.
Who ended up being responsible for the oil pipeline that was struck a few years back?
Everybody involved had some,
Some level of accountability?
everybody involved had some kind of accountability, yes.
Yeah, it's kind of,
That was a huge environmental issue.
yeah. It's,
And
oh,
last
sorry.
one that I see.
Do you know if Shaw, I'm presuming it's Shaw Cable, has joined the BC One?
Shaw Cable has not joined BC1. They're the only major utility in the province right now that is not a registered member. However, that may be changing in the future because I believe that Rogers and Shaw there has been some exchange of facilities out here in BC, and some of it's going to Rogers. And Rogers is a registered member, but Shaw is not. Shaw is very. We work with them very, very closely. They're very proactive in terms of the importance of before you dig. However, they're not a registered member, and we'll have to remain to be seen. I think it will probably go into Rogers before it actually gets registered.
Okay, good. All right, we seem to have come to the end of our chat questions. And we are still a little bit a ways. I think it's 11:15. Is that correct? For the next one?
One just popped
Oh,
up.
okay,
So,
one just
one
popped up.
more.
One more.
I don't mind at all.
Okay. Oh, I gotta read that
It's
one.
a long one. Larry Wilson wrote a long one.
Larry Wilson. All right. I once pulled a piece of curb with a backhoe, and the gas service was in the concrete and not buried in the ground. I didn't break the line, but if I did, who would have been responsible for the damage? A BC1 was on site.
A BC1 was on site. Did you had the hand exposing of the gas line be done? Because that would probably be the question.
It sounds like the gas line was in the
Yeah.
concrete, so I don't think you would have been able to do that. He was lifting the curb.
Yeah.
The way I'm reading this.
I don't really know how that one particular case would be handled. That would be a really good question to ask Ian Turnbull, who is the damage prevention manager at Fortis Gas, if you ever get an opportunity.
Well, it's a pretty obviously, Larry, maybe it's obvious to me. It seems obvious to me that line was not put in properly, but to start with.
Yeah.
I guess it would be one of those ones where there would be multiple litigation.
And if the excavator has done their due diligence and they've got their one call ticket and you've got these extenuating circumstances, it's highly unlikely in my mind that the excavator would be held responsible for something like that. But I'm not a litigator, so I can't say 100%.
Yeah, that's usually the way it works. But
Yeah. Due diligence, that's the key. As long, you want to make sure you got that one call ticket, you've got it on site with you, you've got all your packaging that you receive from all the utilities so that you can demonstrate you've done your due diligence. That's what's going to protect you against litigation.
yes, I agree with that. Okay, I think our next one isn't coming up till 11:15, so we've got almost 20 minutes here. 20 minutes here before the next showing. I can't entertain you guys for 20 more minutes. No, that's not going to happen.
BC
Quick, just we got one from the very small audience here. But you can place it? Can you place a BC One call from a cell phone?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. we think so.
That's the mobile. The only challenge with placing the locate from a cell phone is that when you do a locate request, you get to a screen where you have to draw a polygon around the area to define where you're digging, and it is very, very difficult to do that on a cell phone screen. If you've got a tablet or something a little bit bigger than a cell phone screen, then it's much easier. In Ontario, they just recently passed a regulation that anybody placing a locate on a mobile app, it had to be like a tablet-sized screen. They couldn't use anything smaller. But it can be done. It would just be very challenging to draw the polygon on the map on a cell phone.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Darlene.
You're welcome. Sorry, I could have had many, many more screens, but I was trying to keep it within the 45 minutes, and I guess I talked too fast.
No, I think we did good, and the questions we got a lot of good feedback, so I think that we're doing well. I think we will maybe just go into a hold pattern. Can we just put a countdown timer for the next one on the screen for?
Jim, if I can just say, if anybody has any questions,
Yep.
they can find my contact number information. I think you probably have it, and please feel free to give it out.
Okay.
And or you can go to the BC One Call website and or just call the office. Send me an email, ddyson@bc1c.ca, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you. If any of your attendees would like BC One Call promotional material, like our colored code cards or anything like that, just send me an email and I'll be more than happy to get it out to them.
That's very good. Nice. Okay. We'll be back at 11:10. Thank you very much, everybody. And,
Thank you, everyone.
see you at 11:10.